Peanut butter. How you doing there, YouTube? It's a Mimo Duo here. My good old buddy Jimmy Two-Time requested a video on how to do CSS transitions for all them buttons on his websites. So you want to get into it, don't ya? Learn about them animations, don't ya? Alright, let's just get right into it, shall we? Alright, so I got this template here. This is what I'm going to use to help build out all these components, these CSS effects. The asterisk right here styles everything on the page. I mean everything. And the before and after, it styles every before and after on the page. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to nuke content box model. Box sizing border box does just that. So if I were to add border and padding on an element by default, it would actually add to space. Even if I specified height and width, it would say, no, you did the border and the padding, it's gonna add on top of that. No, I don't want that. I want border and padding to just go within the defined space that I created, and I want margin to help create space. For the HTML on the body element, what I have is height 100%, and that fixes it to the height of the viewport. I have two custom properties here, my mist and my purple, and that matches the CSS effects theme that they have going on. For my body element, I have display grid and place item center, and what that does is it horizontally centers all of my elements and also vertically centers all of my elements. So think of this as a shorthand for align items and justify content. And for each button that I have up here, I wanted to have a border radius, so get a little smooth there. I put a color of purple and a padding of 10 pixels on the top, 10 pixels on the bottom, 20 pixels on the right, 20 pixels on the left, and a text decoration of none, because by default, it'll have a whole bunch of crazy underlines, and we don't want none of that. So the first button I'm going to work on is a burst button, and that burst button is right here. Ooh. Oh my god, you're hitting me with the good stuff right off the bat. And what I want to do is I want to define what my starting values are, what my starting CSS properties are, and what the hover properties are going to be. I want this burst button to have a var of mist. So this is a custom property. I'm using it from the root element, the HTML element, and it cascades all the way down. So any elements within HTML can use this bad boy. Now that kind of looks good already. When I hover over it, it's not going to do anything. That's the point. I want to create a circle, because if you look at the CSS effect, it's sort of, there's a circle there. And it starts from scale 0 to scale 1. And not only that, if you look closely, it's not just scaling that size, it's also fading that circle from 0 to 1. So there's a few ways we can do that. If we use a before, I can create a circle. And I'll start by positioning this circle, and I want it to be centered. And the way to do that is to use a percentage value. You can do top 50%, which is 50% of the height of your parent, and left 50% of the width of your parent, and translate -50%, -50%. And this is a little bit different. Translate doesn't go based off the height and the width of the parent. It goes based on the height and the width of the element you're doing it on. And well, you can't see anything now. That's the point. You can't see jack diddly doodly. You still can't see jack diddly doodly. Though if I add this purple here, you still can't see jack diddly doodly. If I add content, that activates the before, and you'll start to see it. Well, oh my god, this is kind of weird because no parents have position relative, and any logical parent would have position relative, so that absolute can be respected. So if I go up to my parent right here, this little burst button, and I type in position relative, oh, now our pseudo before is centered right within that button. Because I put position relative, it is now respecting that button's space. And to make this sucker a circle, all I gotta do is border radius 50%, my favorite part. Now the weird thing is, it's not cut off. This circle is still a circle, but I want it to fill the button. So how do I do that? It's sort of filling the button, but if I do overflow hidden, it'll mask out the circle. That's what it's gonna do. So this is weird, I can't see the text. Well, the text is purple and the circle is actually on top of the text. So what we can do is a little bit of a trick. We can use z-index -2, and what this will do is, yeah, it's gonna hide it. But, oh, I got some thunder over here. But if we use z-index 2 on the parent, it sort of creates a new layering stack. Oh shoot, well, it's still weird because my text is purple and I need it to be the other color. Let's first shrink this circle so that we can see our text. We'll use that scale property. We'll add on another transformation to our currently existing transformation. And what that'll do is combine transformations together in this particular order. If you take it out of order, it will get kind of quirky. So if you're rotating stuff, if you're translating stuff, make sure you get the order correct or it'll goof on you. So it disappeared. That's awesome. That's what we want. If we put a hover on this, well, we want to hover the color first. And we'll transition to this mist color. And when I actually look at the results, well, just transition, how dare you, sir? If I put on a transition of color and whatever time that I want, so 0.25 seconds, then we get something. But now here's the weird thing. My circle is not transitioning as well. If I take this before, plop it down here, nested within the hover. So this is saying burst button, hover, before. Then I can start to transition this scale as well. I'll take that, pop, 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 pop. Do you know what's gonna happen? It's not gonna animate, but we're sort of getting there, right? It's so close, I'd say. What we can do is add a transition of transform. So we want the transform property to transition 25 seconds, 0.25 seconds. All right. Yeah, there we go. Looking pretty close, right? So there's one extra thing that we're missing. If we go back to the CSS effects, there's a fade. There's a fade on this button. And how do we do that? Well, I said transition transform. Can I put anything else? Yeah, you can. You can put opacity 0.25. So the same time. That's weird. It's not transitioning opacity. I never said what to transition from, what to transition to. I want to transition from opacity 0 to opacity 1. Transition from nothing into something of color. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we recreated it. So to recap, our default transition from has a color of this purple, and the transition to has a color of this mist background. And we've specified transition on the default state and on the hover state just by applying it to the base selector, this burst button. For our before, we've said transition from an opacity of 0 to an opacity of 1, and also from a transform of that centering that I talked about before and a scale of 0. So right up, shrinking down, little sucker, to boom, bursting out wide. I wanted the transition to be on the default state. So the default state of my before has a transition no matter what the state is. It could be hover, focus, focus within, da-da-dee, da-da-do, no matter what. It's always going to have that transition. And I want that transition to be opacity with a comma and transform. And then boom, we got a thing. Diddly-daddly-doo. The next one I wanted to do is this little twirly button. It's going around. It's going around. This one right here. Whoa. Whoa. Yeah, I want to do that one. It's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to use transition. It's going to use animate. And the default state is going to have this animate. But you could also apply that animate to hover if you wanted it to animate on hover. So my markup here is twirl button. Twirl button. Let's take that twirl button. Let's make a circle out of it. Let's make a good circle out of it. I'll make it a little bit bigger for you guys. And I want the border to be a color of this mist. I want this mist color for the border. Now that I got a border, I can put a border radius on this sucker. And I have some default padding. If I just nuke that, I should get exactly what I need. A nice little perfect circle. though it has a darker color up here. And what you can do is you could actually isolate the border sides and give it a specific color. So if I say border top color of purple, then I'll get the exact shape that I'm trying to replicate. Though it's not animating, well, shoot, let's just put animation, sucker. That's how you define an animation on your default state. So no matter what, it's going to be animating. And I want to name it twirl. I want it to go for 1 second. Yeah. But I want it to go forever. It's not going to just go one time and then stop. That'd be kind of boring. So I'll put on infinite. To define the keyframes for that animation, all you got to do is do @keyframes and then twirl. Oh, okay. And we're thinking, well, what's my from? What's my to? My from is a rotation. Transform, rotate 0. To, transform, rotate 360 degrees. So we want it to start here and then move like a clock all the way back to where it started. All the way. To do that, we could say 100%. That's my last keyframe. Transform, rotate 360 degrees. Oh, that ain't 360 degrees. Boom. What we can see is it goes around. It's going around. But it's like stopping at the top. How do we get it to just be a continuous motion? How do we do that? Well, twirl is the name, 1 second is the duration, and infinite is just saying how many times you're going to loop. But there's another thing you can add on to that called linear, and that's an easing function. There's linear, there's cubic Bezier, there's ease in out, there's ease, there's all kinds of stuff. But there we go, we recreated it. That was pretty easy, right? And the other thing we'll do is a shove. We're going to shove that button. So which one is that? Let me look. Oh, just with that burst, we have an element that's inside, that's moving. It's moving from the left to the right. So let's work on this shove button. Shove button, yeah. And our default state is going to have a background of mist. It's going to be a nice little mist. A soothing mist, I'd say. Cool. Our shover me has a background on it. If I wanted to transition, well, I need to say what I'm going to transition. So I'll put in box shadow, 0.25 seconds. And on my hover state, I wanted to animate the inset of this box shadow. Well, I have to find out how wide the button is. So 118 pixels, blub, 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 on the x-axis. And we don't want anything on the y. We don't want any blur. We don't want any spread. No spread. No. And we want the color to be, what color is it? It's this darker purple. Cool. So if I hover over this button, ooh, you see, the color's not animating, but that's not what I wanted to show you. The edge is concave. It's not convex. While this is easier, it doesn't get me what I want. So let's put a before on it. And I want to match the exact height and width of the button. So I can do position absolute, top 0, left 0. I like to specify height and width because it to me seems more descriptive, but you could also just do top 0, left 0, right 0, bottom 0, and that gets you the same effect without the values added to it. And well, there's nothing there. Yeah, that's the point, because there is nothing there. If we add a var purple, boom. Oh my god, yo, just covered everything. What do I do? Well, if you checked out my video from 2 or 3 weeks ago, you would know the position relative on the parent. Anyway, yeah, that's what I want. And the weird part is it's square. The edges are square. I know that I set a border radius on all the links. So if I do border radius inherit, it's actually going to inherit the border radius of my parent, which is sweet because if you ever wanted to circle and you didn't want to say 50%, you could do inherit as long as the parent has inherit as well. Sweet. So the other problem is it's covering my button. How dare you cover my button? And what you can do is, instead of saying left, well, there's a few things you could do. You could do transform, translate, negative 100%, 0. And that'll go all the way to the left-hand side. If you wanted it to be on the right-hand side, cool, just do 100%. Though, if you didn't want to use transform, you could hook onto right and left and all those kinds of properties, and you get the same effect. What that means is the before is the same height and width as the parent. So no matter if you use top, right, or if you use transform, translate, it's always going to be the height and width of the parent. Now, if my parent was bigger and my child was smaller and you wanted to have it on the left-hand side, you would have to use this right 100%. It'd be a whole lot easier to use transform since we're going to translate that anyway. That's going to go way over to the left. Oh my God. No, we don't want that. So I'll put a left 0 back on. And then I want this to transform. So I will transition, transform, and my lovely default speed. Nothing's happening, which is fine. That's what we want. If I hover, I want the color to change on hover. So I would want the color of our element to change to this misty color, since the blue, darker purple, blah, 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 background is going to be underneath of the text. This should get me a little bit closer to what I want. Just make sure that the color is transitioning as well on my default state of the shove button. Perfect. We're getting there. What do we do next? You tell me. I'm listening. Okay, I think you're right. Yeah. Put on a before, move that transform all the way back to its default state. No positioning whatsoever. Cool, nothing's happening, but if I hover over, ooh, shoot. Oh, yeah, we're getting there. The other thing is we could use that z-index trick that I taught before, just making sure that there's a negative z-index, but the parent has a positive z-index. And that would make sure that the background is in the back, the text is sort of in the foreground, and the before is right in smack dab in the middle. So now if I hover over, oh, it's getting there. It sort of thinks I'm hovering over the before. A lot of what I like to do if I'm using a before is to do pointer events none. And it's just a little trick to make sure that when you hover over something, it's only interacting with what you're hovering over, not some kind of like trick of the mind like a nested before or after. So you see, it gets rid of that crazy transition. But we're not quite there yet because that looks like a pile of poop. That's because I'm not masking the element at all. So if I put overflow hidden, yeah, it's gonna go away. And that gets me exactly what I want. But oh, I have a little rounding error. So I could just say 102. And that sort of gets rid of that little rounding, that little edge that you saw there. But that's the effect. That's the shover me. You want to shove it? To round up the shove button, yeah, the default color is a purple. The hover color is a lighter mist color, and I have a transition of color. My before is a element that takes up the exact height and width of the parent button. It is translated negative 102% to the left, and then on the hover state, it is transform translate 0, so right back smack dab on top of that button. And the cool thing that I did was this negative z-index behavior, where there's a negative z-index on my before, which means that it's going to be all the way behind everything, but since I put z-index of a positive 2 on my parent, it sort of creates a new stack, and the text will show on the top, the pseudo before will show underneath of that, and the background will be hauled away in the background, just like we wanted it. Now, the last ditty I wanted to show is this zoom button, and I think the zoom button is kind of crazy because there's a lot of stuff going on. You have two circles. One starts at a scale of 0 and moves up to a scale of 1. And then you have another circle that just has a border on it, and it's scaling from 1 to something a little bit greater. Let's recreate that, shall we? The zoom button, well, it's a circle. And we've created a circle before. As this little spinny thing keeps reminding you up top. I don't want to define, I just want to define a shape right now. So I'll have a circular shape. And I want to make sure just to nuke the padding from my link that I specified up top. And there's two elements here. There's the circle that fills in, and there's the bordered circle that bubbles out. But I both want them to be the exact size of my button. So I'll do the same kind of covering method that I did before with height 100% and width 100%. Also making sure that I put on content so that it shows up. And I don't want to specify a background or anything like that just yet. No. I will make the before my bordered circle. So I'll put border, it was kind of tiny. So I'll put a border of, get my dark purple. Come on. Put it on there. Perfect. It didn't show up. Why not? Well, because I didn't put position relative on my parent. Always gotta remember, talk to your parents about position relative. There's something weird going on. I want the border radius to be inherited so that it's also a circle. I want my before to have a transition of transform and opacity. If I look at the actual effect, yeah, that's what's happening. The filled circle is not animating opacity, so I have to treat these differently. My default state on the before is going to have transition, opacity, and a time of my favorite 0.25 seconds, and also animating the transform. On the hover state, I want the before to scale outward a little bit, and I also want it to fade out. So I could specify opacity 0 and transform scale 1.15. If I hover over it, what's gonna happen? What do you think's gonna happen? My button's gonna disappear, but it's gonna grow a little bit bigger. Oh, why? Because I didn't quite put the properties on the right element. Now, if I say before, yeah, it's gonna do what I want. Am I gonna fudge my fingers a lot? Yeah, but, oh, we're getting there, but it's still not doing exactly what I want because I did fudge my fingers. Okay, perfect. That is exactly what we want. When you hover over, it gets bigger and it fades out. So now let's do that scale of that filled button. We'll style the after to have a fill on it, so just a background. So what this will do is now I'll have this big circle. That kind of looks like the pulsing thing, right? It does look like the pulsing thing. So that's one way to solve it, but you could also do box shadow. For my after, which is this filled in circle, I want to make sure that it's hidden by default. Boom. Hidden by default. It's not going to show up. It's going to disappear. Whoa, thank you. Now I want the transform to transition. So I'll put a transition on the default state of transform 0.25 seconds. Now nothing's going to happen. Yeah, because I didn't tell the after to do anything yet. I want the to state. I am from a scale of 0 to a scale of 1. And how I would do that is just transform scale 1. I think we got it. I think we solved it. Bibbidi bobbidi boobity boo. Nice. Yeah, that's it. I hope you got a lot out of this video. I know CSS animations and transitions is a tricky topic. So if you ever want me to do more, let me know down below. That's a few inches down below. If you look closely, you can see it. It's right there. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. See ya. Okay, you want to stay right here? Let's see. You go, you stay right there. Okay. Let me see. Where's my baby? I'm not gonna get your bone bone. I'm not gonna get your bone bone. I'm not gonna get your bone bone. What? Okay, maybe I will. I'm gonna get your bone bone. What? Okay, baby. Okay. Oh, you really want to protect that bone bone, huh?